you geeks! Jordancon is coming in 3 days, and I totally procrastinated. I knew I wouldn't have time to make a separate video and prepare my cosplay for Jordancon, so I figured, why not both?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Also, Rachel Maxey's latest video featured her making a green dress, so I was inspired. Or rather, the long-suppressed urge to make a female Greenman costume, or a nymph, has been reawakened. So, let me break it down for you step by step. Step 1. Inspiration. During my Arthurian phase in high school, I was reading books like Avalon High or The Once and Future King, and yet I never made it over to the Wheel of Time. Coincidentally, at the same time, I was taking an art class, where for no particular reason,
I just kept on going.
I decided to make my own Greenman mask. A Greenman comes from the medieval English folktales, the likes of whom taunted Sir Gawain. With this cosplay, I am now one step closer to a Sir Gawain and the Green Knight couple's Halloween costume. Marriage is, of course, a duel to the death, which no man of honor can deny.
Honor. That is why a knight does what he does.
And I crossed it with a Venetian carnival mask because I wanted things to be fabulous.
I want fabulous, that is my simple request.
And so, voila! There were originally many more leaves on this mask, but they fell off as the Wheel of Time turned, and in my college renovation of the project, I decided to add interweaving Celtic knots of vines on the face instead.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
This is my starting point for my Nim dress. Step 2. Acquire materials. Naturally, since this is a Nim costume, I needed leaves. However, this is April in Minnesota, so natural leaves were out of the question. It snowed right after I shot this footage. Off to the thrift store.
I'm gonna pop some tags.
The first one I stopped at didn't have any green material, but it had some white I could use for an Aes Sedai shawl, once I get around to that. Most importantly, it had a few fake flowers, and the MVP of this project, the fern cluster. Off to the second shop, which not only had the right shade of green fabric, it was from a curtain, giving me an opportunity to make a green dress for the Wheel of Time from a curtain.
Great ball of fire, and my 40 years now. I'm going to Atlanta for that $300, and I've got to go looking like a queen.
If I was inspired before, now I was ecstatic.
The gown is gorgeous.
Thank you. I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist it.
Third, I needed a pattern and some supplemental plants. I'd seen Project Runway before, and no, you need a lot of unconventional materials to cover a dress. Fortunately, the plants were on 50% off. When choosing a pattern, I considered that the theme for Jordancon's Saturday night dance party was the Roaring Twenties. Fortunately, those dress styles are rather simple, like giant sacks, which I would need if I was going to make this dress quickly. However, the only pattern I could find was the Halloween costume version, which had a few distinct modern differences that caused problems later. On to step 3, making the dress. From the pattern, I decided to go with the B option. I would use the marked fringe lines as a placement guide for a fringe of vines I was intending to make. However, here is where I ran into my first problem. There wasn't enough fabric to make a full separate skirt, so I figured I could just extend the pattern by a few inches, because if it was a more authentic 1920s dress, the skirt would begin below the waist. However, this dress's pattern had the skirt starting above the waist. So by extending it, the new dress piece reached only almost halfway to my knees. Even with fringe, that is not enough for sufficient skirt swooshiness for this costume. The second problem I ran into was that the fabric was a very thin, loosely woven linen. It's the kind of sheer fabric that I expect Damani dresses to be made from. The sheerness wasn't the problem because I would be covering it up with leaves anyway. The problem was this frayed terribly, and if I didn't do proper French seams to finish all the interior pieces, I was not going to have a dress by the time Saturday rolled around. If you want to learn more about French seams, please see my prior sewing video I did on this channel. Not shown here is me re-sewing the entire dress 3 times to get all of the seams properly finished and fitted. I also decided to add a ruffle from the edges of the curtain that I had previously abandoned, thereby using up all of the remaining curtain fabric. Using the salvages that were already seamed, I did not have to sew a hemline, which was very good because adding this ruffle to the bottom of the dress was a nightmare in and of itself. With the dress all together, I could now cosplay as a background character from the Peanuts. But I wanted more. Step 4. Decorate. I didn't start with a concrete plan of how I wanted this dress to look. Besides, covered in leaves, and I had a lot of leaves. Vague concept of matching the vine pattern on the mask, but I wasn't sure how I would do that. First thing I figured was to get some general guides on the dress and to break it up into sections, providing some extra green texture. So I cut some long, narrow leaf shapes out of spare quilting fabric, which importantly does not fray very easily, using them to demark the shoulders as well as a beginning of a fringe line, and in the middle a possible placement for a Celtic knot. The knot design was quickly abandoned when I discovered the fern. By layering its leaves, I could practically cover my entire midriff section, and I went with that. I sewed on the guides, then got out the glue gun. Realizing I would have one pattern in front and a different one in the back, I started to cover the side seams with dark poinsettia leaves just as a background. Then I turned to the front and the massive fern fan. For the bust line, I found smaller gray-green leaves. They sort of blended in with the base dress and stood out nicely from the brighter green leaves that I had put on my shoulders. Gluing all this stuff took a lot of time, so I highly recommend having a good book to listen to.
The end of the 5th book of the Wheel of Time.
After that, it was time for the back. To speed things up, I kept the leaves on the vine and glued the bigger ones to the dress. This gave the back a 3D layering effect and practice for attaching the fringe. Lastly, I added more red throughout the pattern. Red poinsettia leaves around the collar and some maple leaves at the base of the palm fan, which not only cover up the base of the fan, but also as period appropriate as that was a design feature from the 1920s. Step 5. The reveal. So that's it. I may find some green gloves to complete the ensemble, as I'm not quite sure I really want to go for the body paint option. Overall, I'm quite pleased with this look and think it will hold up to the rigors of Jordancon, although I can only sit down quite carefully. Next week, I'll be tuning in from Jordancon, and then we'll be back to my regularly scheduled fangirl shenanigans. So please, like, share, and subscribe if you want to see that. Thanks for watching. Bye!